Good morning. My name is Kim Barthel, and I'm a Canadian occupational therapist, speaking to you this morning from central Mexico. I have the delight and the honor to be talking to my friends and colleagues, Emer and Regina, from Kells, Ireland. And we're going to be talking about our upcoming conference in Kells on May 8th and 9th. It's called Psychosensory Intervention.
Hi, Kim. Great to see you again this morning. We're really looking forward to your next trip. But just to introduce ourselves, I'm Emer Crowley and this is Regina Donnelly, and we are occupational therapists working in our service hand in hand children's occupational therapy. We're based in Kells, County Meath, Ireland.
Can you tell us a little bit about your practice and what it is that you love about the work that you do?
We're a children's service practice here called Hand in Hand Children's Occupational Therapy. We're based in Kells, County Meath, and we work with a wide range of families who, from all parts of, the surrounding area. The age group is pretty, pretty extensive as well. We're usually working with children from, ages 2, 3 to right up to 16. So yes, we have a lot of families that we're working with. But I suppose one of the things that we feel is really important about our service is that it's a family-based therapeutic intervention service. That's what we would, base it on that. We work very closely with families, from the stage where they present to as we walk along.
I have been to your beautiful center, and the heart and the warmth that exists both within you and within the walls, and just how peaceful and safe of a place it is for families to come. So I know the location firsthand. The very first time we met was in Dublin when I came to speak about trauma. And then again, we reconnected in Oxford at the Master's Series, where we got to share more about our passion for the polyvagal theory and the treatment of children of trauma. And this is where our joint mission came together in deciding to present this information in the Irish context. So I'm wondering why it is this topic is important to you.
And we trained in SI and we were using that. And then when we, polyvagal came into our learning, it sort of made sense of things, in terms of, our nervous system and emotional regulation, not all just being tied up in pure sensory. And it was an answer to a lot of our questions. And I suppose then when we went to see you in Dublin, obviously we knew we'd been following you. You had a good, that sort of emotional regulation has always been a huge piece in your work, and it was much more varied than just pure SI, if you like.
And that was a big shift.
That was a big shift. And I suppose one of the reasons we feel, we're trying to push that learning and facilitate that shift, in the Irish therapeutic, or even the Irish psyche and the Irish, sort of awareness in therapy. So we're trying to do that, but I think, obviously, doing that, Kim, you have much more experience and knowledge and recognition in this area. So I think it's really important that, getting your support has been phenomenal, in moving that.
Yeah, and I think it's that shift from not just thinking about sensory processing, but how that relates to the nervous system and vice versa, that we always see that bi-directional link. You can't talk about one without
the other,
referencing the other, because one has such an impact. How we process sensation has an impact on the nervous system, and where our nervous system state is at impacts how we process sensation. So like that bi-directional link, that was the big shift for us.
Yeah.
So how polyvagal theory interweaves.
Yeah. And also I would say in terms of our learning about supporting ourselves as therapists and how important in the Irish context, that is, and for services, that, oftentimes therapists working in public services may feel under-resourced so it's kind of the prioritizing of what really can make that difference, and how we can support ourselves in doing that.
In so many ways, what you've just described are some of the roots of psychosensory intervention. And people might wonder what the heck that actually is and why it's called that. And so if it's okay, I'd like to take a minute just to describe that so that our listener can put themselves in the picture as to what they will experience when they come to be with us together in May. Like you, my history is in sensory integration. Deep love, right all the way back from the beginning as a new graduate. I don't even actually want to tell you what year that was, but I'm now a junior senior. So many, many years ago, I was a student of Jean Eyre's and loved how she deeply gave us an understanding that we do the things that we do because of how we process information that comes from our senses. And in the context in which I was treating, which was central Canada at the time, there were lots of children who were referred to me with a wide variety of different labels, diagnosis. And in the population of children that were receiving service through a public system that was supporting children who were homeless, living in what we would now call adverse conditions, the diagnosis highlighted the sensory differences, but it's as if the environment in which they lived was a separate thing. And so I was treating kids from a sensory lens and landing in their trauma. Finding myself engaging with children who I thought would be more regulated through sensation, and ended up finding myself activating kids into their memories of adversity, into their re-experiencing of their adversity because of their connection to themselves. That's how I'd explain it today. But the 25-year-old Kim had no idea why these proprioceptive, vestibular, deep pressure touch experiences would bring a child into the present moment and then result in their revealing such stories of their life experiences that were so adverse. And this was the beginning of, oh my gosh, the mind is connected to the body. And when we help children be more present through their body, they have more access to the whole of their life's experience. And as an occupational therapist early in my career, I had no idea what to do with this or how to even respond. And because I was working in a mental health context, I had clinicians around me who were versed in play therapy, who were psychotherapists, working with kids through psychotherapeutic lenses of intervention, that it started to, in my own mind, come together as a holistic process. And so psychosensory was sort of born out of that early experience, which for most of us comes from the clients that we treat. And so I'm wondering if that happens to you in your practice, where you start out looking through the sensory glasses, so to speak, and you end up seeing or understanding the child in a bigger way through their heart and their mental health.
Well, I suppose one of the things that maybe ties in with that, or that comes to mind before, as I say, we would have been coming in with that sensory lens, and focusing on that. But as I say, our service has evolved and with our learning, and we're much more family based. So in that, you become more aware of, home life and the challenges that home life are, that home can present at school, and, as well as, sort of past memories, of family, of the child themselves. So I suppose, yes, our lens has changed. And that's one of the reasons that I suppose Hand in Hand is much more family based in inclusive, in sort of looking at it in a more holistic way in that regard also.
Yeah, and I think the term psychosensory, again, is that holistic, the mind and the body. And even ourselves, not just the children and families that we support, but obviously starting with ourselves, because the most powerful tool we have is starting with ourselves. So I think psychosensory, it is that holistic, and it applies to all professionals, not just OT. Like this course is so relevant across the lifespan, working with different populations. Because it's not just, relevant for OTs, it's applies to any professionals working to support any, not just, we happen to work with children, but even, the courses covers all across the lifespan, all populations.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I was just going to say, being really truthful about it, as we've kind of progressed and learned, and reflected, when you become more aware of your state and how you present and how that impacts the other's state, the child, the service user, the person that you're working with, your colleagues, whatever that is. As we've become more aware of that, certainly it's had a much more positive impact on how we, meet the child, in therapy. Because I think, that's something that we would really try and work on.
Wow. One of the key emblems, symbols of psychosensory intervention is a bicycle wheel. And we call it spokes on the wheel. And there are, in that word that you keep mentioning, holistic, the bicycle wheel represents that holism of how we approach our interventions. And the very first spoke in psychosensory intervention is us, the therapeutic use of self, and how we, and as you've just so beautifully said, both of you, and our state of being influences, positively or negatively, the experience of the people that we support. And, psychosensory intervention doesn't just happen in a clinic. It can happen in a mall or at a gas station or in a coffee shop. I'm remembering a beautiful coffee shop in Kells, where we interact with people from a space of connected compassion. And how, when you are attuned and present, you put your mind in the mind of the other, that this creates a sense of safety and authenticity in the person's capacity to feel their best self in our presence. And we always say the only person you can change is yourself, really. And what this means is that a big part of the training is learning more about yourself and how to understand your own history as well as support yourself compassionately. The other concept that you mentioned that is the second spoke on the wheel is attachment theory. When you talked about families, one of the key integral concepts is the understanding of attachment and transgenerational transmission of trauma, and how our histories are passed from one generation to another. And I know that this is deeply impactful in the Irish context, and wondered if you could speak to that for a moment.
Yeah, so if you think of the context of intergenerational trauma in Ireland, we can think as far back as the famine, colonialism, and recent years, well, and not so, and recent years, there's a long history of like abuse within schools and institutions, the treatment of women in Ireland, the Magdalene laundries, the conflict, Northern Ireland. So there's a long history of trauma in our history, and really within that whole context, that's where this course is so relevant, and how that does impact us in our being and what we carry as a generation now. And I suppose it's that understanding and how all, the research around intergenerational trauma and how that does impact on generations and on how we are and how our beings within the Irish context now.
And it's even acknowledging that, and how relevant it is for our services public, and our service providers and our service users, because we're all, I suppose, under that umbrella.
I wanted to pause just for a minute and acknowledge both of you for your courage, just to even speak what you just spoke, and your wish to hold space for your community, your country, the people that you serve, to make room for dialogues that are so hard to have, to even find the words to know what to say, to have the ability and the safety to say it out loud, to put voice to it. And I put you on the spot in that question, knowing how difficult that question is. And you showed the courage of leadership to create that safety for people to step into at their own time and space and willingness, to want things to be easier from a space of compassion. So thank you for answering my forward and hard question with such grace. The course that we will be offering in May, not only does it talk about history, but it, of course, gives us ideas of what can we do. And you can see how sometimes the focus can go towards the trauma. But Ireland is extremely resilient. Humans are resilient. And psychosensory intervention captures this resilience. Why are we still here? In spite of all the things that humans have experienced. And what is it that we have in our nervous systems that give us the capacity to continue to celebrate and thrive and be together? And so the body really has a lot of those answers. And in the course we will do together, we have many activities that come through the sensory systems. How we move our bodies against resistance, lycra is an example. Or how we use touch intentionally, or sound or music, or space, or how we may even recommend to a person to spin their body when they experience stress, and to shift through the body places of increased experience of resilience, not just the feelings of discomfort. So our workshop is deeply practical. And additionally, you will learn what to say. What to say to a client. Oh, I notice how when you wrap yourself in that lycra cape and you look like Superman, because you're 5 years old, your shoulders relax and you just took a deep breath. And that told me that your body feels comfortable. So how do we put together these embodied places of strength with words? And just want to say to both of you that in my experiences of time with you in Ireland, you have continued to rise to the occasion to teach me some of those things to say. And want to thank you for wanting to continue to share this work with your colleagues who may not just be therapists. So I want to come back to you and say, would you just remind the colleagues that you have who are not therapists how this work might support them in the education field or social work? Just bring it back to the broader audience for a moment.
Yeah, like we have with social workers, OTs, physio, speech therapists, psychologists, psychotherapists, play therapists, who are coming to the course because it's so relevant no matter what profession you work in, educators, teachers. And like you talked there about, I think that's what people want and need, is to understand the impact that trauma has on the body, and what do you even mean by trauma, and the impact it has on the body and how we function and participate in all walks of life of all ages, and then practical ways of, okay, we understand this information, but what can we do?
What can we do to support the child or the person we're with? Practically.
Yeah.
So
and no matter what service that is in, because it applies across whether it's in adults, older adults, community hospitals. And
how we connect and interact with each other has such an impact on each other. And I think, sorry, Regina, I interrupted you.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I think what's really important, for us, here we're sort of trying to, bring this information to educators particularly, because I think there is, more of a shift in sort of therapeutic areas, but certainly in the educators, I think it would be really positive, because I think it's an understanding that, behavior is not, behavior is something, that gives us much more information. It's not behavior for the sake of it. It's not good or bad. And I think that's a huge shift that I think we would see as a very important. But I think, this information is really essential for all of us working with, different client groups and in so many different settings.
And I suppose you also mentioned there previously about therapeutic use of self and how it starts with ourselves. And I think that's an important key piece, because in a lot of services, and a lot of professions, there is a lot of pressure. There might be limited resources, limited funding, high caseloads, numbers, wait lists. And I suppose that's psychosensory intervention really to support professionals working, or educators working in these areas, around how we can look after ourselves, so that, because there is, I know the word burnout is used a lot, but there is a lot of, it's a real issue here, within services, both adult, children, all services. There's huge pressures. And really that's where we have to start to understand this and start with ourselves. And I suppose that's where psychosensory intervention really supports that piece as well. And then if we hopefully with this training, we will have more longevity in people's careers and in, which in turn supports all the service users.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a very big piece of information there. That how we take care of us enables us to take care of those around us and stay committed and find passion and joy in the work that we do, which is so deeply embedded in service that can create that state of feeling depleted and drained, and how to find that place within where that service lives within us as life-giving rather than something that takes our energy day after day. And that is a very big part of this work, of the process of psychosensory intervention, for sure. I'm just wondering if before we come to a close, is there anything else you would like people to know about the upcoming course, either about its content or the logistics?
One of the things that we would say to people, if they weren't fortunate enough to attend your previous course, that's okay. There is that online training that you're providing to bring people up to date with the content. So that's the course is very accessible for all, even though this is an advanced level. There is the webinar which is available, the online training which will bring everybody up to speed.
Right.
Where we're at.
Yeah. And content wise, we do have that information on our website when you're booking the content of the 2 days and all the information of what the course outline will look like for those 2 days. And logistics wise, it's in Kells here, it's in the Headford Hotel, so it's a 2-day in person. Yeah.
So it's in the centre of the town, and there's always parking, and it's very easily accessed, from the main dual carriageways, across country. So it's easily accessed, and I think in some ways a little bit nicer in terms of when you're in a city centre setting. Those sort of things are a bit harder. The logistics of that are a little bit harder, getting parking, getting there, but we still have the nice surroundings and facilities that are here too.
Oh, I'm getting excited just thinking about it. I want to also just comment that I've had many inquiries of can we attend, even though I'm not from Ireland. I'm from Italy, can I come? I'm from France, can I come? I'm from the UK, can I come? I'm from Denmark, can I come? And the answer is absolutely, that all are welcome.
And there's good accommodation available as well. I mean, it's in a hotel conference area that is being provided, but accommodation is readily available as well. So that kind of ticks that box as well.
Yeah. No, and we had people traveled from UK and Europe for your last course, so and that's very accessible. Yeah. So everybody's welcome.
Yeah. Thank you both of you for your time today, and I look forward to our precious time together in May, and we will give you some updates while we are there online so that you can learn more and more about psychosensory intervention. And thank you for your deep desire to want to continue this work.
Thanks, Kim.
Thank you, Kim. Yeah, thank you so much, and we talk soon.
Okay.